In the purr of its engine, in the smooth ballet of its moving parts, lies an unspoken bond, a bond of respect, of shared history. This Octavia VRS is not just a mode of transport, it is a companion, a silent confidante bearing witness to a journey paved with ambition and unwavering dedication. For Prithwi, this car is not a mere collection of components, it is a fragment of his soul. It's a story written with oil and gasoline, a narrative etched onto the tarmac under the vast, endless sky. So Dada, where did your journey with cars start? When was this that your craze for cars started? When did it begin?
It started with a very odd car, Maruti Suzuki Zen, automatic.
When automatic?
Yeah, my sister could not learn to drive a manual car, and that's the only car which my father would allow me to drive.
Okay.
I started driving that car. That was the first car I learned to drive on. Then I went to the US.
Okay.
And then US jaake, I saw the culture. It was brilliant. I mean, they were so inclusive. You know, anybody, doesn't matter if you own a car or not. You show up to a car meet, you ask people questions. They are so caring and so much into their own passion that they'll share that passion with you. And that passion is what gets you. They are talking about their cars, they're talking about the way they work on them. That infuses into you.
Okay.
So that's where my journey started. I mean, it started with a Zen, which I used to love driving. I didn't know anything about cars back then. When I went to US, when I started going to college there, I had a couple of guys who had pretty nice cars in the campus. One had a WRX and another guy had a Acura RSX.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a small two-door hatchback. Basically, Integra car, last version. So I started getting into cars with them, started going to car meets with them. They literally exposed me to the culture because there were two different. Honda culture is a very different culture. You know,
I think you also had a Subaru there.
Later on, much later on. So my first car in the US, what I could afford at the time was the third-hand Mitsubishi Galant V6.
Okay.
So
V6,
yeah, it's an automatic car, horribly underpowered, but it's a 3.5 liter V6.
I see.
So it's pretty decent. I mean, the grunt was decent.
I think underpowered too, mostly because of the whole reason. It's a very typical JDM thing that they keep it a little underpowered so that the engine lasts you for donkeys.
Also, the problem with that car was the NA car. And that was under the top converter gearbox, 4-speed automatic. And the second gear didn't work.
Okay.
Second gear actuator was broken.
Oh.
So it has to, I had to rev it out till first full goes through, then goes to second, goes to third, and then go.
Okay.
I drove that car for about a year and a half till I got a decent enough job. And then once I'd gone to the Mitsubishi dealership to get the car serviced, and they had just launched the Lancer Evo 8 back then in the US.
Okay.
And I was like, what the hell is this car? You know, this car looks so different. And I didn't have a PlayStation back then. I didn't know about anything about the Evos. But then the guy's like, hey, you know, you're Indian, right? I'm like, yes, I'm Indian. You know how to drive stick? I'm like, yeah. Can you please help us park this car? I'm like, okay.
Serious?
Yeah.
Lancer?
Yeah, Evo. Evo 8 fresh off the truck.
Evo 8 is the same Tommy Mackinnon.
No, the Evo 8 was the next one. The boxy shape one.
Got it.
The 7, 8, 9 was the same generation. So the guy is like, can you help us park the car? I'm like, I'll help you park it, but I have to drive it. And the Lancer, the car that I had in the car I started with was 35 horsepower then that thing was 120 horsepower at best.
Okay. Okay.
And from 120 horsepower you go into 270 horsepower four-wheel drive turbocharged car. I had never driven a turbo car before that. I took it for I'll take it for a test drive. Like, oh, you know, you can drive stick. Indians they have a huge regard for because you can drive stick. So they gave me the keys. They said, okay, come on, I'll go with you. We went for a drive. I came back. I'm like, I'm on this car. Period. So within 2 weeks, I put together money, reduced my operating expense so I can afford the car, and I got the Evo. And I had never driven a manual car that powerful. I'd never driven an all-wheel drive car. I'd never driven a turbo car. And while I was getting my bearings, I lost the car so many times on the road, not even a joke. I stalled it, I have spun it around because I didn't know how to go fast.
Right.
So once I had actually spun it around on a highway, and this was late at night. I was coming from my friend's place, and I was I was checking the tires and all. A whole bunch of Subarus came by. I'm like, wow, okay. Then one guy's like, you have an Evo. He's like, yeah. I am guessing you don't know how to drive it pretty well. I'm like, I'm learning.
Define pretty well.
Yeah, so he's like, yeah, I can see the tire marks from a mile away. And you kind of lost the car. I'm like, yeah, I lost the car. So, like, all right, you know what? Here's a club meet card. Just drop by the thing. We do a lot of these track days and track. I'm like, I don't know how to drive on road for the track. No, come, we'll teach you. So that's how literally, these people, they pulled you in.
Okay.
Right? And I went to one of their autocross events, and I'm like, autocross. I didn't know what autocross was back then. So they sat me in their car. They taught me this how you do it, this how you do it. Then one guy actually, who that time the Evos were just coming into US. They weren't that big then. So there were like 20 odd Evos in New York. One was mine, and the clubs were just forming. The Evolution clubs were forming.
There were only 20 Evos back then.
They were just launched 2003.
I see.
They launched
right.
first iteration because left-hand drive they didn't have before that.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
So then the Subaru guys also bought Evos. They became the Evo club, and slowly and steadily you get more confidence about driving the car. You understand the car better, you understand what the car is doing. And then they had these driving schools called HPD, High Performance Driver Education courses, in which they'll take you to a track. They'll half a day of learning, proper, learning the track, doing the track walk, sitting as a passenger in the car, observing the instructor how they're doing it, and then half a day of full driving.
Okay.
Kept on doing that. I got so hooked onto that, and then I started obviously proper track days. I started doing. US was significantly cheaper than India for all this stuff. A set of slicks for this car in India would cost you about $1.5 lakh. A set of slicks from the US, $100 a tire, $400 you get slicks.
Damn.
That last your entire season.
Oh wow.
That's the price difference, right? So we got there, I started doing the stuff. I got so hooked onto it that I actually got pretty good at it.
Okay.
Like any skill, you keep on doing it over and over, practicing again.
You
improve.
Correct.
I wasn't the best, but I wasn't the worst. I was somewhere in the top 10 list. Right. And then there were these time attack events which used to happen over there for stock cars. That time I didn't even know about modifying it.
Okay.
I was just getting used to a stock Evo 8. I'm like, can I manage to drive this car without crashing, killing myself or killing the car? Because I had blown out a clutch already.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Evos were notorious because there's such a low compression engine. I think it was 9.6 or something the compression ratio was.
Okay.
Yeah. And so if the turbo isn't kicking in, you're stalling the car. So if you're on an on-ramp, you're in first gear, and the turbo hasn't kicked in, you'll stall the car.
Correct.
And you will come back. There's no way you can go up again without doing a launch. And I didn't even know how to launch the car back then.
Yeah.
I had all-wheel drive, turbocharged rally sedan, which I had never launched for the first 2 years of owning it. Yeah, so that's
okay.
it. And that's where the community comes in. The community is so strong. They literally take you in. They teach you whatever you want to learn. You want to go in the direction of driving, fine-tuning your driving style. They'll do. There are sub-communities within that community which are focusing only on driving. Then you want to go into tuning. Then there are sub-communities within that thing who are just focused on tuning. You want to go into handling. There are guys who are doing handling work. So you can learn a little bit of everything from everybody, and then you decide which direction you want to go in. So my first introduction to a modified car, and modified is proper modified, not just putting an exhaust and remap.
Right.
Was when I had gone to one of these track days, and there was a modified car session before us, and there was a Miata. And I looked at the track. I was looking at the timing sheet, and I'm like, what the fuck is this Miata driving? Excuse my French. Because that car was posting times which were like at least 4.5, 5 seconds ahead of us. That was the best times that the Evo group had posted before.
Okay.
So that car apparently was owned by the track car, the guy who maintains the track.
The track manager. Okay.
Track manager, yeah. So I was like, what's so special about this car? He's like, have you ever driven a go-kart? I'm like, yeah. This is like a go-kart for the road. I'm like, you can't be. Come on, I've got 276 horsepower, dude. You're like 200 horsepower tuned. I think 180 tuned.
That was the time where you were in this impression that horsepower
matters. I mean, I was in the zone that this is a fast car. Pay for the speed.
Understood.
Then he's like, okay, do one thing. I will chase you. I will not pass you. We'll do 2 laps. And US, the tracks are very open. Unlike BIC, which is very restricted on what you can do. That if they know that you're an enthusiast, they know you're a group of enthusiasts, they let you do. Like we used to rent the entire track for $500 a day.
Oh.
Yeah.
$500 a day?
Yeah. That's the rental charges.
Okay.
Yeah. So full day. So HPD session was the whole day session.
Okay.
So, and we used to like chill. So I went out. I took my Evo out. He's in his Miata with a roll cage. I didn't even know what a roll cage was. And I just could not shake him. I just could not shake him. There were so many points that time he had those inbuilt cameras in the car, the big cameras. That time there was no small cameras. So then he came back, we downloaded put out the small cassette deck, put us in the briefing room. We said like, see, I had you there. See, I had you there. See, I had you there. I'm like, shit. I'm like, but how can a 130 horsepower car do that? That's when my curiosity about modification started. I'm like, what have you done to this car that it has a better power to weight, way better handling than an all-wheel drive car with an electronic computer? So it does everything for you. Here you're doing it manually. And that's when I'm like, I need to learn this. There's something that curiosity inside you drives. And I'm like, how does he do it? And then the Fast and Furious movies also came out around the time. And then wow, there's a whole different world over there.
Wow.
That's what got me into modding. That Miata, I still remember, was the blue and yellow Miata. It opened my eyes that, what can a car do if you do it properly.
So now that you just mentioned about your, when you started understanding tuned cars and modified cars in general, I mean, see, you've got all the money that you want right now. I mean, of course, not all of it, but at least a lot of it. You could easily afford to buy one of these very special European performance cars like M Series and AMGs. But why did you go in for something like a Skoda RS, and why do you believe in tuning it, and what's the logic behind it?
It's dollar per horsepower. The idea of getting a factory sports car and running it as it is brilliant. I mean, it saves a lot of money. But India, the gap between a factory sports car and a tuner car is so high. In the US, by the time my Evo was built, I was still at 40% of the price of an M3. Right, $28,000 car, and the $10,000 in month, I'm at 450 horsepower, putting crazy lap times down and outrunning M3s and Porsches on track.
Yeah.
India was the same scene a while ago, before all these big guys became turbo. All the Porsches and the M's became turbo.
Yeah.
So the way you can do it the way you want it, or you can buy a car which is made for you. Nothing wrong in either philosophy. I believe in the prior philosophy because I can stop when I want. Right? If I like the Skoda, I didn't stop. It went to 380 horsepower, all kinds of stupid stuff.
You're talking about the Laura, which you
Laura.
Okay.
So the Laura was all out. This one is much more different approach.
Okay.
And you can take different approaches. Like if you buy a factory sports car, you're stuck with what the factory has designed for you.
Right.
Here you can add individuality to it. You can add your own. You can set up the car the way you want to drive it to suit your driving style versus adapting to a driving style set by a set of engineers that this is how you would want how the car should be driven.
So, if I'm not wrong, I mean, I still remember the Laura, the kind of stuff that you had done to it. You said 380 horses under the hood from a 1.8 liter TSI, and people abroad are doing way more than that, from what I know.
Not on the 1.8. 1.8 with the. If you want to keep the stock block, that's max you can go. So that car was running one of very rare APR's custom maps.
Okay.
Because we were running the factory car comes with a 2.5 bar pressure sensor, which is the maximum boost it can read.
Okay.
Right. Due to a freak of nature, the turbo that APR sent me was spiking.
Okay.
It was going above 2.4, and 2.4 means absolute, not pressurized. Okay. Right. And I was losing the boost line, and car was going to limp mode. So, fortunately, with APR, the guy who was the sales guy for APR was also one of the sales guys that I dealt with when I was in the US. Okay. He was working that time for Cobb Motorsports, Cobb Access Sports and all. So he had moved to APR. So I synced up with him, like, I'm having this issue with your car, with your tune and your turbo. Okay. You guys aren't able to solve it for me. So help out. Community is there. So he's like, okay, fine, let me work with the calibrator, send you a couple of beta files, see if that works.
Okay.
So we put a Golf R 3-bar sensor on the car. It's probably the first car in India to run a 3-bar map sensor, which takes your available boost from 24 psi to 30 psi.
Oh my god.
29 psi to be fair.
Okay.
So we ran that boost, then all hell broke loose because the car's clutch started slipping. The PCV valve was not designed to hold that much internal pressure. That starts leaking, oil leaks, this, that. So once you do one thing, 10 problems arise, you start fixing those problems, 10 more problems arise. Eventually, slowly, you get there.
Okay.
And that's because the 1.8 TSI platform, even though it's very popular in India, abroad is not a very popular platform. Nobody
you
wants
mentioned, like, while we were behind the scenes, you mentioned that normally abroad the same machine used to come with the actual VRS engine, which is the 2 liter, which this one
GTI
has.
motor. Standard Volkswagen GTI motor, 2 liter.
Okay.
In India, until the Mark III VRS came out, they had only 1.8.
And which is actually not a VRS engine.
Which is basically a commuter car engine.
Okay.
And that comes with its own challenges because the commuter car engine is a very high compression engine for fuel efficiency, which is exactly the opposite. You need to put a big turbo in it. So then, because the commuter car engine is a very soft clutch and a very different gearbox than what you would want in a sporty car.
Yeah.
So all these problems you work through as you build the car up.
But then I remember the Laura was a very, very hard puller on straights, if I'm not wrong. And that was pushing out more numbers, slightly more numbers than what this is right now. So I'm sure there was a transitional, emotional kind of a thing that you would have experienced while shifting from that to this. How was that for you?
That was a very different experience. This car is a lot more like a precision instrument. And I'll take you for a drive and you'll figure out what I mean by it.
Okay, sure.
That car was a brute force.
Got it.
That car, I would call it a front-wheel drive Mustang. It can go anywhere. If you're lucky, it'll point straight.
Okay.
And if it goes anywhere, if you're lucky, it'll come back to you.
I see.
This car is stuck. It's stuck to the ground. A simple example. That car potentially had every mod available for that platform in it.
Okay.
Be it LSD, be it chassis braces, be it a rigid rear brace, be it upgraded fuel pumps, be it a bigger turbo, intercooler, everything that was possible for the Laura platform was there in the car. Suspension upgrades, anti-roll bar upgrades, caster correction, control arms and on. With all that on PS4 tires, the best I could do with an inch of my life of trying to not kill myself and not destroy the car on track was the 229. That was my best time on the track.
Okay.
The stock car, this car, did 232.
Oh wow.
Stock car, nothing, not a single change to the car as it is from the factory, nothing. As it is from the factory with the factory tires, 232.
Wow.
Stage 1 with some mods, 228.
Okay.
Stage 1 with chassis mods and suspension, 226. So with just 310 horsepower, no anti-roll bars, no caster correction, just by working on the chassis, I am actually faster than a car which I couldn't do no more on.
Wow.
You can't do any more. The Laura was done. It was the best it could be. There are all the parts that would make it a proper race car. Still, it would not beat the 229 mark.
According to you, what makes... you just mentioned about your journey when it started with all JDM cars.
Yeah.
From Zen to then a Nissan and then to a Mitsubishi and then to a Subaru.
Evo, yeah.
And then this shift happened wherein I think you shifted to WAG cars.
Yeah.
Why was that?
It's actually pretty shameful, See, US JDM cars were very cheap. WAG cars were very expensive.
Okay.
And they were notoriously difficult to work on.
Okay.
So, as a part of it, I had 3-4 cars in the US. I had a Evo 8, I had a STI, Subaru STI, the 2005 one, which is the bug eye.
Yeah.
Inside the peanut eye, as you call it.
Peanut eye, yeah.
Yeah. I had a Legacy STI, which is a Subaru Legacy in STI trim.
Yeah.
And I had Evo 10. Right. So, we used to look down upon the WAG community over there. I know.
And here you are.
Yeah, I know. Life comes around full circle so well. We used to look down upon the WAG community. We used to say, oh, shit cars. If a Jetta GTI comes by and shit car. Because they were shit cars. To be fair, compared to the JDM cars, they were shit. They've always been shit. In terms of modding potential and in terms of the aftermarket available to them. But somewhere after Subaru and Mitsubishi exited the WRC program, their car also fell off the grid. Like after this 2005-6 STI, they knew that hatchback STI was a completely trash car.
Really?
Yeah. It was a horrible car. Then the Evo, after the Evo A7, 8, 9, the Evo 10 was a horrible car. I owned one.
Okay.
It was horrible. I mean, if you drive a Evo 8 and a Evo 10 back to back, like, what the hell is this? Okay. It was too heavy, it was too bulky, the engine was a different engine.
Okay.
They had removed the 4G63. They had put in the DCT gearbox, which 50% of the time worked, 50% of the time overheated. They had accelerator pedals made out of plastic, which used to brake.
Okay.
Clutch pedal used to brake in the car. Imagine you're clutching in a car and the pedal brake. It happened. First generation Evo 10s had tremendous issues. Brake pedal braking.